Welcome to our Thursdays with NoMAA. Before we begin tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce NoMAA's Art Stroll Coordinator, Martin Collins, who has a special statement to share with us tonight. Martin, you're up.
Good evening, Neria, Michelle. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on Thursdays with NoMAA tonight. Sponsored by Best Buy. They are nationwide with locations in Puerto Rico and Canada, and their new store on West 230th Street and Broadway, which opened last July. Best Buy has you covered for computers and tablets, electronics, TV and home theater, cell phones, home and business appliances, office furniture, and more. Best Buy's Riverdale store is open daily from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. and you can purchase online with in-store pickup and free delivery, and visit their website for more information. Catherine Brito, who is an Inwood resident, is Best Buy's Riverdale General Manager. There she is. You can email her at catherine.brito@bestbuy.com with any questions. And we have a few more photos from their opening day ribbon cutting ceremony on January 23rd. There's a robust crowd taking some photographs. We also had Congressman Adriano Espaillat in attendance. There he is with left to right. Adam Soto, a senior executive at Best Buy, a regional manager to his left, our congressman, and Catherine Brito on the far right in that photograph. And there was also earlier in the montage, Assembly Member Jeffrey Dinowitz and City Council Member Eric Dinowitz, his son. There they are. And I believe there's one more photo there of Catherine under a rotund of umbrellas. There she is, a very happy young lady at the opening day of Best Buy in Riverdale on West 230th Street and Broadway. And we are very happy. The Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance thanks Best Buy for sponsoring tonight's Thursdays with NoMAA, and Takashi Harada and Kae Sato. Maria, back to you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Martin. And thanks to Best Buy for your support tonight. Good evening to all of you. It's so great to be back here tonight for our third of 4 shows of our Fall Thursdays with NoMAA series. My name is Neria Leyva Gutierrez, and I am the Executive Director for the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance. Before we begin tonight, I'd like to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs for their support for this program, which we started 20 months ago when our city and our worlds, frankly, shut down, and which we have continued since then, recognizing the wonderful value that these programs bring to all of us. I, for one, feel honored weekly to learn so much about our artistic community, to be in its company, and to feel so enriched each and every time we have this program. And as you know, for those of you who have joined us before or on occasion, this program is to open the virtual door to these studios, to uncover the rich, complex, and creative worlds of our artists that our artists occupy. And so with that, and as always, we encourage you to feel free to ask questions and engage in conversation with our featured artists. So please deposit your questions in the chat throughout the evening or when you feel moved to do so, and we'll be sure to give you an opportunity to ask them of our artists tonight. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight's featured artists. And I say artists because we are very fortunate to have 2 artists with us tonight who not only share physical space, but artistic, intellectual, and I dare say spiritual space as well. I will start by introducing Caies Sato, who was born in Tokyo, where she graduated with a BFA from Matsushino Art University. Her father was a sculptor who built a studio in the suburbs of Tokyo, where Kae was reared. Next to this studio where Kae grew up was an agricultural experimental farm where she spent hours playing with her mother and brother among the abundance of plants and animals, a space that no doubt influenced her greatly. Indeed, nature has always occupied an important place in Kae's life and work. Believing fundamentally that there is a soul that resides in nature, she has sought to observe it, to attempt to make sense of it, and to dwell alongside it. Her works exhibiting a kinship with the world around it. Kae's works have been featured in numerous solo exhibitions in Japan and New York, including the 2021 show Transboundary at Chalk NYC for NoMAA's Art Stroll, as well as dozens of group exhibitions in New York and Japan. She is a Nihonga artist, which we will hear much more about tonight. And in that capacity, she has also served as an instructor all over the United States and Japan, sharing her technique with others. Above all, Kae is driven by the power of living things and the natural world, the adaptations of the environment, how humans respond to these adaptations, and how these forces ultimately coexist. According to Kae, in the shape of every single thing in nature, in the large structures made by human beings, even in the shape of each and every one in the forms of tiny insects, there is immeasurable history that cannot be seen visually, embedded as various memories. The memory of these can be captured in the shapes, patterns, and movements. And these, for Kae, afford her the strength to live. And now allow me to introduce Takashi Harada. Born in Saga, Japan, Takashi has lived and worked in the United States, Canada, Europe, and Asia. Takashi is a Nihonga painter, born and raised in a porcelain making family in a small town called Arita, where Japan's first porcelain was made over 400 years ago. Originally expected to take over the family's kiln, Takashi instead decided to pursue painting. He earned his BFA from Tokyo's National University of Fine Arts and Music, where he majored in Japanese painting. This degree was followed by an MFA from the same institution, also in Japanese painting, and an appointment as a teaching assistant there as well. In 1997, he completed his doctoral degree in Japanese painting. Takashi is a recipient of numerous grants and awards and has exhibited his work in dozens of solo exhibitions in Japan and in the East and West coasts of the United States. His participation in group exhibitions also spans the United States and Japan. In 2021 alone, he participated in 3 group exhibitions in New York City. His works can be found in various collections, including Tokyo University, Kawasaki and Mitsubishi Heavy Industry Companies, Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and the Westin in San Diego. Together with Kae, he has served as a Nihonga instructor across the country and in Japan. In his work, Takashi conveys his fascination with memory, and more specifically, the process by which human senses engage with memory to form pictures and images. This exercise corresponds with his ruminations on the natural world. In his words, how when humans immerse themselves in the natural world, our information as life, recorded in our genes, become one with the natural world, and their common structure connects us to each other as tiny individual atoms in the natural world. These are the works, those conveying peace, calm, and serenity that Takashi aims to create. I am so excited to have both Kae and Takashi in our virtual studio tonight, and so I happily turn the evening over to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for introducing us.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone joining us tonight. And then we'd like to share our practice of Nihonga and then some of our works and exhibition together. So I think let's begin the video, I guess. This is, okay, starting with Kae.
So these are Japanese brushes made with deep hair, rabbit hair, squirrel hair, etc. I'm doing gold gilding. I'm using a kind of scissor made with bamboo. This is only for gilding. Some drawing, a way of painting. And then exercise drawing. I'm mixing a pigment and glue in a ceramic bowl or a dish. The glue is animal skin glue. It's a protein-like gelatin. In Nihonga technique, we don't mix different colors in one bowl. This time, I'm mixing red in the bowl. We need to slightly change the amount of glue every time we mix because humidity and temperature is different every day, every season. Just like making bread or making dough. We need to mix very well. We put Nikawa glue little by little because each grain of pigment have to be completely covered by Mikawa glue. It needs some sense and experience and patience. Not easy, but fun. At first, I make some small size drawings to get my idea visible, and I enlarge it to actual size. Next, I transfer real size drawing onto the surface. And then I start to use the colors. While mixing a color, I'm thinking for next processes and layering colors. We achieve the aiming color by layering the color pigment. I want to make this part purple. There is a blue color already, so I'm applying red on top of blue. I use the water to spread the color and to make blur-like wash technique. This is vertical brush of hard hair. I'm stitching for commission work. The client wishes to have a picture expressing unwavering mind, hope, and the ability to open up the future. So I looked around the neighborhood to get some ideas. Finally, I found this big pine tree matches the idea. I will continue more sketches.
Next is my part. This is some things from my studio practice, mixing sumi ink, and then also some preparing white pigments. This is which is called gohan. Which is made with oyster shell, and then I'm applying the water on the surface. So I usually walk around to see nature nearby, and then I capture some images in my head, and also took some photos as my own stock image. And this has been my kind of my habit for quite a long time. Used to be I used with film cameras, but nowadays it's the phone is very convenient. So I have quite a lot of images to remember in my head also, and then also the camera. So then this is our studio. We share space as a system, and then also it's very limited. It's very small. And I'm making swimming by rubbing the swimming curve with some water on the stone curve, especially for making swimming. So I start directly draw tree branches and then with some ink on the surface with brushes out of my memory and some images from the camera. Sometimes I have printed out images in hand. But usually directly I paint, draw and paint. So I usually do not make large actual size drawings. I do make some small small sketches to make sure my idea is a kind of visual support. And this such is the same way she does. And I have several motifs for my paintings, like trees, skies, clouds, waters, like fire frames, etc. But mostly I paint trees or some kind of plants these days. So those are one of the neighborhoods I was looking at and taking photos. And then I use as colors after the finishing the drawings and applying the waters and on the surface. Every time I make a wet photo, completed all surface and then fixing the wetness and apply the colors. One color each time like one day and let it dry overnight. So now this is kind of dropping the pigments on the surface. So this is kind of starting with this process. It's really after layer, and it's my first time to try. This painting is actually based on an image coming out on my head during I was listening to music composed by Beethoven. And then this one is the very start of the painting, and then completed painting was shown at I have an exhibition at Chuck in New York, England, this October. So I put the water first, and then cover the totally in the surface and dropping the pigment. And then actually this is I'm painting from the back. In the Nihonga technique, there's a technique called urasaishi. It's called the paint from the back, and then flip over again, and I paint that out on the surface again. So I will try to make it kind of even. The water is going through, and I need to control the water and the wetness. So, and then that is for our video. So actually, I needed to mention this first, but this film was made by my friend Kata Pinto, and also it's my show at Chuck. And also this film project, short film project, was supported by New York City Artist Scope grants.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more about Nihonga in general? And sort of the origins and sort of the connections with the past and the technique that you use. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this means?
Right. Nihonga is, by the term of Nihonga, it's actually coined by an American philosopher in the 18th century, when the New Japan was turning from the shogunate period to the kind of Meiji period. It's kind of turning to kind of conserving the Western culture. He was invited by the Japanese government to teach philosophy and English to the Japanese scholars, but he actually found the Japanese painting, Japanese culture, really kind of important to conserve. So it's the kind of opposite way he was supposed to do. He was trying to conserve the Japanese paintings and some cultures and then techniques. So then he was kind of lecturing those kind of artist students and scholars, and he was just used the English as a Japanese painting. So it was translated to the Japan as a Nihon, and the painting is a gun. So it was painted for the Japan Nihonga. It started, but it's actually basically the term for the kind of researchers. They use the different way. After the Meiji era, they called Nihonga, and before that, they called Yamato-e. And Yamato is also the same as like Yamato is an old name with Japan, and A means painting. So it's pretty much same, but they changed the name after the Meiji era and before that. So
that's
yeah, technically it's pretty much same. Yeah.
so that's so interesting. So the expectation was that he would bring Western sort of, you know, art or technique to
Right.
Japan, and instead he sort of embraced the Japanese traditional style. What were his Western influences? What was the expectation that he would bring to Japan?
Actually, it's just it doesn't. His role was teaching the philosophy and the English, but he was guided by the one guy from the Japan government. He's called Tenshin Okakura, and then those two people try to correct the Buddhist statues and then conserve the painting, screen roll, frame painting, something like that. And one day was actually they were introduced to oil paintings to the Japan, but instead actually they are trying to conserve. So it's kind of there's a kind of conflict in the Japanese government and something so on. And then Tenshin Okakura was actually later on came to the United States and then became the first Japanese culture curator in the Boston Museum.
Yeah.
And also he worked for the Metropolitan, I think. And then and also the many of the collection is the Boston and the Chicago and the Metropolitan is probably constructed in that era.
And so just one little bit, Western painting and Japanese painting different because that is a technique. Because a long time ago, and similar to Chinese painting to come to Japan, and so line is very important for us. So, and Western painting is different, not line. So, and then if we painting the nature, so at first making a line, and so use the sumi ink, and so different. And Western culture is the oil painting and directly to watch everything, not just line.
Right. No, that's interesting. And then of course, I mean, so I would think that then there was a resurgence even in the 19th century in Europe with Japanese artists looking at, you know, wood blocks and other types of traditional Japanese art, even among the Impressionists, you know, Degas, for example, it was an artist doing that. So this predates that in that sense.
So yeah. And I also have the material things. Actually, I have a flip board right here.
Mm.
So in the oil painting, the pigment is pretty much the same kind of consistent. The thickness and the grain is the same pretty much. But the Japanese paintings use this is supposed to be like a paper or a surface, and we start using the final grains first. It's going to be kind of cross pigments as well. And then supposed to be this is the kind of pigment, right? And then different sizes. And then about like this purple is kind of Nikawa glue. So it's kind of making a layers.
Mm.
So we can see the like a prism.
Yeah. So then the lights actually there's a space. Actually, there's a space in the between the grains, so we can see through the bottom color and see the reflection. And then we are kind of seeing the mixture of this orange and then red as we catch that with eye. So this system actually influenced the expressionism. No, it's Renaissance in the oil paintings. So the Seurat or Cézanne, they learned this the techniques from the Japanese paintings.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Those correspondences in the 19th century, and even I think the the interest in capturing sort of the fleeting qualities of nature and the notion of being an observer of nature and all of its adaptations with Kae, you sort of talk about as well. I think we have a question related to that that I want to ask KB23. Can you unmute? I think you have a few questions about technique and process. Would you like to ask your question? I think you're unmuted. Are you there? Can't.
It's called an air purifier on Black Friday, but it's very small in the picture. If this is big, I have to return it.
Okay, I think we've lost KB23V1. There are a few questions there. Maybe I will ask them. The question here was what the surface was, the pigments, using the back of the painting, surface of sort of canvas or paper. And I think both of you speak about the different surfaces that you use.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically, the most of the younger painters use in washi paintings is that the washi painting is a really has a lot of the variety of the painting. It's a thick one and a thin one, and then especially different the Western paper is the length of the fiber. Japanese paper has a very long fiber, so very strong. Even wet, it's kind of hard to kind of tear apart. So, and then
like this, and so
you cannot tell it's very thick and very thin. Yeah,
it's a Western paper.
Copy
paper.
But it's really hard to tear apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can I? Yeah. And then you can actually see the fiber, right?
Mm.
It's a copy paper, like this one.
Yeah. So those paper also is handmade, and then it's takes a long time to make this type of the paper too, and it's very expensive. So then any kind of surface, the porous surface we can apply, and the wood or the cotton or the silk or anything, and then I started to use the cotton canvas kind of a long time ago, like 20 years ago or so, because for me it's to make it broad and clear. The expression is easier for me. And then Kae was started using cotton canvas when I came to the United States, and then but she's still using the paper as well. So.
Speaking of coming to the United States, I'm so interested in this. And I know a little bit what the answer is because I've had a conversation with you. But how did you end up in the Upper Manhattan? How did you end up in Uptown? I think Kae, maybe this is something that you want to talk about. Michelle, I think we might have an image here for that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about coming to the United States and sort of your trajectory, and then sort of how you ended up here uptown?
Yeah, so there's Michelle, there's the picture of the bridge actually.
Yeah, Golden
There we go.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
the Golden Bridge.
This is the Golden Gate Bridge.
No, it's a George Washington.
Sorry, George Washington Bridge. So, and at first,
How long ago? It was
and
10.
almost 10 years ago, I came here, across the art museum at first. So, and I saw that this red bridge, but now this bridge is different color. It's a white.
White or gray or metal color, like, and then.
Yes, and I think so. Each bridge is red. It's real. So, but I come here, and after 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, right?
No, it's 4 years later, and then after seeing this.
Yeah, different color. Amazing. What is this color? So red is very beautiful because I painted this bridge, always the crowd, and so there are many white color around this bridge. So, and inside is the red bridge. Is
Oh,
beautiful.
I see. Yeah. The crowd and some kind of mist, I guess.
Yes. Title.
Yeah, I've heard from the story, and actually
Yes.
she saw this image from the question.
Yes.
So this red color is actually the primer. The primer and the paint. They were still working on that, and then for the new paint on the over cover. But only she saw is a very short time on the red color.
Very
George
short
Washington Bridge.
I asked another people, someone. So, and is it real color? No, it's white bridge.
So yeah. Then actually she liked this neighborhood at when she visited this area.
Yeah.
So she asked me to find an apartment this area, and then looked around, and then I found this area.
Yeah. So, and I lived in Tokyo, so outside of Tokyo, but my family's house in the nature like this inwood. So I think usually in my apartment, I think so. This is my Tokyo's house.
Very similar.
Similar.
So yeah, so you felt at home. I love that story because again, that's the power of observation, right? You're seeing something and it happens to be fleeting, even though it's a physical structure,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you disappointed when you realized it wasn't red, or were you okay?
Yeah, but it's okay. Not disappointed because just one. That is time. That time is special for me, and so maybe someone special for someone. So it's
I think that's interesting. I mean, both of you work so intimately with nature, and so I think it's sort of you're wired to be adaptable, right? You're wired to kind of adapt and conform and observe and tell us a little bit about that, because I know that in your instruction, you travel everywhere and you travel to different parts of the United States, and you're in different terrains and different environments, and so the environment plays an enormous role in your work and in the pigments that you use and your technique. Tell us a little bit about that process and what that looks like in terms of your day-to-day and in terms of your philosophy.
so. And I think it is very important thing to be impressed. So because sometimes I went to the outside, so and sometimes I listen to the music, and impressed is very important thing, because so maybe somebody have a plastic and flower, or plastic flower or plastic fruits, but different to the real thing. So real things is give us to impression and taste, or reading something, or it's beautiful, and sometimes we can feel. So and that feeling is humans have all humans have sense. So not just computer. So and if you go to the outside or the nature, you can feel the ground, or life of trees or life of flower or life of very small insect from life. And life gave us the memory. My memory is tree. So tree is all their life. I think. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. So my practice is a little bit kind of similar way, but it's pretty bit different. And then actually we met in when we were 18, right, long time ago in Tokyo, and we went to the separate college and then different way, but we didn't know each other at the time and the separation, and then like 23 years later we met again.
So we
And
don't
so
have any
internet or
smartphone
something
or
like that.
internet.
Yeah, but we both pursued like a thing in nature. That's because it's a her she was like raised in the sculptor family and also played in the farm or something. I also grown up in the really countryside of Japan, and then we played both like in the nature, and then that's our base. So and then actually it's kind of it's a funny, but our birthday is only 6 days apart, and then very kind of similar family kind of members. Like our father is the same age, our mother is the same age, our brother and sister is the same age, and then we are same age, and then something like that. So it's a kind of, and also the family is both is the kind of making the art world. So it's a very similar family.
And my mother's birthday is 1 day different
to me,
Takashi.
me.
So
So
it's a little bit stubborn. Yeah, sometimes all looks like my mother's.
So yeah, so then
So-
enjoying the nature is very kind of similar. We share and then the techniques the same techniques also I mean used, but really bit different is the observing the nature. Of course, very important for all the Japanese painters is for the observing the nature is at its core, and then we need to really carefully to watch all the time when we walk around, and then the nature, the feel the temperature, the feel the air, and then every object subject we are watching and try to express it. The first is object observe is the very important. Although I don't draw, but she's draw, but it's different. But very carefully we need to watch, look at that object, and then feel that, and then sometimes we eat that orange or something like that, but it's the apple. That is a very important for us to catch the nature actually.
So I mean, I think it's fair to say you're very deferential to nature. Sort of nature dictates your process. So you would sort of have a parallel kind of process of a creator, but the nature is creating, and you are abiding by whatever laws those are, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yes, yeah. And we use this color is from nature, like jewelry. Right?
It's colored rock.
Yeah.
It's a crushed colored
yeah.
rock, right?
And it's the same color, but different grained
Yeah.
type. So it's blue, but just grained, so very.
Very good. This was a rough grain, and this is a very powder. So then like I in the flip like this, the white powder, the grain is the fine grains. It's reflect like a diverse reflect, and the cross grains is we can see the direct colors. That's why it's gonna be like a darker. So that's the kind of the science, and then we observe that we need to use those kind of the kind of scientific observation to paint.
And so it's a group. We had This is a glue, Nikawa glue.
Nikawa glue. It's a
So from
it's a dry state.
right, and different shape we had. So it's same glue of Nikawa. So this is
But,
and
yeah.
different, right?
Those are made of the animal skin, like a cow hide or something like that.
Many type of.
And then they can make from the fish, and they can make from the different animals. But the basically the mixture of the natural green, the rock, colored rock with animal protein, and then put it on the cotton or paper is also the come from nature.
So,
right.
and we appreciate every time for the nature. So,
So
and
these are part of the ancient techniques that you,
Right.
that you continue to use.
Yeah. Yeah,
I-
because that's basically, I mean, it's kind of surprising that 2 years ago, the scientists found the cave paintings.
Yeah.
It's a 23,000-year-old cave paintings or drawings made by,
Yes.
they use a really same techniques as we do now. It's actually the iron oxide iron, something like that, with the they use glue as the seal protein from the seal nearby. It's a nearby the Cape Town. It's by the ocean. So there were a seal. So they kill the seal and they broke it, and then they took the animal proteins from the seal and they mixture with the copper iron oxide to make it a drawing of the brown drawings. So that technique is really old. It's 73,000 years. It's we do a really pretty much same technique right now. So the Nihonga is actually the pretty much only techniques that the mixture of the real rock and the animal protein as the binder. So any other Asian cultures are already created into different techniques. So
we think so. We are connecting all the world. I
Right.
think.
I think, Allison, I think that was your question. You were curious about the binder. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. And Michelle, what about you? I know you also had a question as well. Do you want to?
Yeah, I love the presence of the water in your work, even though, you know, obviously they're dry. It's dry when people are seeing it. But could you explain or expand on how the nature of water affects what you're doing?
right. You want to talk about? Yeah. So water is that. So then the first we mix with the rock and then the glue, right? And then dilute with the water. So that it's kind of water based. It then similar to the watercolor, but we use the glue as the Nikawa, the animal skin glue or rabbit skin glue, similar way. And then different artists use a different way. How much they add the Nikawa glue and the water is different. Every single artist is a different way, but it's similar way. But the similarity is only use the grain and then the glue and the water. That's right. So then how much you add the water on the surface is different, but we kind of similar way is pretty much same is to make it the blow and then kind of wash technique. It we apply the water and we spray it and on the surface, and then apply the pigment and then make it kind of wash technique. So then we need to conserve the wetness until like a dry at the same time. Right? So we waiting like a whole one night to dry up, but we need to really kind of looking at where is it drying the faster, and then this part, if this part is taking long time to dry, this part is gonna dry faster, and that difference make it some kind of trace of the glue. So we don't like that. So when you don't like that, we need to apply another water here, and then we need to wait like dry completely at the same time. So it's a really not like a paint and a leave like
Yeah,
that. It's not like that. We need to watch all the time.
Watch. Yes, we need to. We need to watch. Be careful.
So you wouldn't
Perfect.
like use a hair dryer or something that
Yes.
would
No,
totally mess up the process.
Yes.
yeah, no. Yeah,
We can't use a hair dryer. Sometimes very quickly we need we don't have the time for
like next day show or
next day
something.
show or
We sometimes use the dryer, but
but don't use it because the dryer is very quickly dry up.
the surface is gonna dry first, and then the bottom is still wet.
Yeah.
That makes weaker.
And
Mm.
broken the paper or broken the cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about the process and the methodical sort of, yeah, again, taking your lead from nature. Elizabeth, you picked up on some of the metaphorical aspects, I think, of all of this process. Do you want to sort of talk a little bit about that?
I very much appreciate. Am I unmuted?
No, you're good. I can hear you.
Yeah, good.
Okay. I very much appreciate hearing about these processes. It's difficult a little bit to discern what you're doing, but it was wonderful to see those spots, the yellow spots and the red spots, as if they themselves were somehow insects on the top of the canvas, if it was canvas or paper. Mostly it's paper, right? And the idea that all of this is because it's nature and because it's ancient processes, so it's stone, so it's water, so it's oxides, you are binding both the colors of today, but you're also bringing the history of
Right.
thousands of years together with what's going on today. And that's really very beautiful. We need more binding today because we have a lot of separation.
Human history.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
very
so-
similar way, and then as a human collection is a
Yeah.
similar way. We need to
Yeah.
find it
Yeah.
together.
Thank you very much. I'll
thank you.
think about that for my work and say, now how can I join this with that? That's
Right.
wonderful.
Elizabeth, I knew you would find a way of sort of, kind of encapsulating that, which it's, this, I think this idea of, and Takashi, this is something that you talk about, in your art, sort of the looking for the calm and the peace and sort of, bringing these worlds together. And both of you talk about coexisting and adapting and listening and looking and observing and how important that is in your process. And I do think, as Elizabeth was pointing out, I mean, that is a metaphor, right, for living. And particularly now, it's one that we could embrace, I think, in very, very fundamental ways. As is a tradition here on Thursday nights, I wanted to just sort of ask a few questions of you, sort of our rapid fire questions, if you might answer, and you can both answer, you can trade off however you want to do it. But we'll just ask a few things just to get a little more insight into your very rich worlds. So I will ask this question, and because you've traveled so much and because you've been in New York City and so many different places, I guess one question I want to know is from both of you, what is your favorite place in New York City or in Uptown, and also in Uptown? I know, Kae, you like the bridge.
Yes. And the Cross Art Museum is special for me because yes, and the George Washington Bridge, and I heard the Rockefeller boat title
And
river
New Jersey part,
New
and then
Jersey
to
part.
conserve the looks and the right and the
protect the nature. So that mind is special for me because he protects them, and that is very beautiful thing. I want to do that.
if we have a mind. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I,
What
like-
about
I-
you,
yeah,
Takashi?
I really like this neighborhood actually. We live in one block from the Hill Park, and then I really like to walk around the park. It's really calming for us, and then that I really enjoy living here. Of course, we have a lot of friends, and the
Mhm, yes,
neighborhood is
yes.
is also very important.
Yeah.
But it's
And-
in Manhattan, well, our image in Japanese, most of the Japanese have a Manhattan as all the buildings,
Yes.
right? In Manhattan, in this neighborhood, this nature is nobody knows, and then it's very rare and then very important, and then
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always so
different.
interesting because when you think of New York, I mean, you think of the built,
Yeah.
environment, but
Right.
you forget of the natural beauty,
Right.
it's an island and there's so many other, and I think there's probably no better place than Uptown to remind you of that, right?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
it's the one great reminder of
Yeah.
that beauty. And
Even
I
the-
think
yeah,
and in particular, and yeah, I think so. And because it's hard to come by, I think sometimes in New York, I think just because that psychologically, I think it's more precious, in that way. We
Right.
sort of, it's nice to get those glimpses of that. But yeah, I agree. I mean, that bridge has a majesty to it. I think that
Yeah, and this area is special for us because the music and museum, many museum living there. So sometimes it's playing in the park. So at the summertime. So if we walk around here, so suddenly the museum playing the something. So it's very beautiful.
both of you mentioned music quite a bit. I mean, it sounds like that,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
that sort of is woven into your work and your process and how
Yeah.
you receive the environment. Yeah.
It likes classic rock too.
Yeah, I like the classic rock and then
Yeah,
80s
good.
and something like that, and then
Oh, is that classic rock?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he listens to the music or at the painting. So, but I'm not very much like it, but now I like it.
Well, we talked a little about music and we've talked about art, we've talked about ancient art. What are your who are your favorite artists, or who's favorite art movements, or what do you gravitate toward, or because you are engaging with the past quite a lot, but what are your preferences? When you go to a museum, where are you finding that you're landing in that space? What are you drawn to?
I like many artists.
It's such a difficult
Art.
question, right?
Yes, Picasso. It's a very famous and it's usual contemporary or the many artists. So I can't select one. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I like on the Western. Actually, I like the Mark Roscoe.
Mhm.
Who do you like?
Mark Roscoe.
Oh, Rothko. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Roscoe. I like the Mark Roscoe. And then from Japanese artists, actually, I like I don't know if nobody someone knows what it is. It's called Tohaku Hasegawa. He's a Japanese a long time ago artist.
Yeah.
And then his painting was shown in Japan Society 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
His painting is yeah. This pine tree is the national treasure, and it's my favorite and best one painting in the world. Actually, it's the pine tree. I just spent like 1 day or 2 days in front of this painting. But then 2 years ago, I think that the Japanese Society showed this the copy version of these paintings, and then
Okay. Yeah. So when I go to the Met Art Museum, so and nobody knows name artist, and when I so and if I don't know his or her name, but their painting gave me that impression. So and when I saw that painting, I draw tears. So yeah, so sometimes I had that time. So because impression, oh, maybe that painting when he or she painting that paint, so maybe they have an impression during the painting, so we can feeling that. So if the how can I say 名前がなくても not famous painter, I like that painting because they gave us the impression for him feeling maybe. So and back here it's too same too because maybe he's very young, but he's very bit of the his power to paint. So and he gave me that power. So and connecting.
right.
So and I want to know his power or give us something message.
Right.
So,
I think that's really interesting. I mean, I think, sometimes you go through a museum with people and they're looking at the labels to see who they're looking at. but you're looking at the paintings and regardless of the labels, and that's what draws you in. And so you're sharing in that power of observation, right? And something that you can convey to one another. That's sort of the dialogue that you have with no, I think that's a wonderful way, right? To
maybe some art gave us the message. So sometimes if we weakness, so and give us the power or message, so we have to catch them.
Right. I think that's right. I think that, if you are paying attention and if you are looking, you're on the hook, right? You have already entered into a contract with that work. You're engaged in a dialogue, whether you realize it or not, just because observation has pulled you into that place. And I think that's right. That engagement. And I think that that's what those works in many respects are there to do, to elicit that
and we can connect.
And you can connect.
So
Correct.
Connect,
That's that binding that Elizabeth was talking about.
The connect is actually the hard thing also. That this painting, the better paintings is the
Mekong
is
River.
living in the Mekong River. It's in the Asian long the big river, and the Mekong is sharing many countries sharing that. So that's why she chooses the beach as a theme to make a different culture to make a connection.
And transboundary.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, because we're sharing time and space.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, right, exactly. All right, so here's the final question, and I'll ask of both of you. And so you have, I'm gonna expand this a little bit. Usually we ask that you sort of suggest 3 guests, but we'll say 4. So if you're hosting as a couple a dinner party, and you're allowed to invite 4 people, 4 guests, living or deceased, or fictional or real, who would you invite?
Oh, that's interesting. Ooh, okay. Like,もし自分たちがパーティーの日やったら、誰を招待する？生きてても過去の人でも誰でもいい。Sorry, we just talked in Japanese, but
I know now it becomes complicated because it's two of you trying to figure out who you're going to do.
Right, yeah.
Right? That becomes complicated.
It's very difficult question.
I actually want to invite Rikyu. As you know, Rikyu is the team master, starting like a team master, and his family is in the it's he's a kind of it's not the origin, but he kind of make it bigger the tea culture in Japan. It's Rikyu Sen Rikyu, and then who was next one?
Roscoe.
Maybe Roscoe. Yeah.
The president. I was the president
President
of United States.
who's Biden?
Yeah, Biden
Mr.
or Obama, Mr. Obama.
Obama?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Obama.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because in US and different to the Japan, so it's a
All right. One more.
One more. Yeah.
One more.
Right. What do you like? Would you like to speak?
How about a singer or one of the singers that you like, or an actor, or
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga?
Oh, really?
Yes, I like Lady Gaga.
Okay.
Oh, really?
That sounds like a fascinating dinner party.
Right.
This has been so, speaking of fascinating, this has really been wonderful. It's been incredible having you both here. The hour flew by. It's so interesting to have a conversation about what artists do, which is to really study, and in your case, in a very, very particular way, the world we live in and how we coexist with this world, and this notion of adapting to this world, and the forces of nature, and the forces of nature that brought the two of you together, which I think are also fascinating. So you really are, I think there's a reverence there, I think, to the natural world that is really beautifully conveyed in both of your works. So we are so fortunate to have had you both here tonight, speaking to us. So we thank you so much for being here, and we thank everybody for joining us tonight. Before we go, I'd like to bring Martin back, who I know has some announcements to make. Martin, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, Neria. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. The Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance would like to invite everyone to these upcoming NoMAA workshops and events. On Monday, December 6th at 6 p.m., artist websites and best practices for artist websites with Patricia Miranda. That will be online. Then on Friday, December 10th at 12 noon, Heal with NoMAA and Linda Turner. That will be in person at NoMAA. On Monday, December 13th at 6 p.m., artists are invited to join us for learning how to produce and edit a standout highlight reel with Emmanuel Abreu, also in person at NoMAA, 4140 Broadway and West 176th Street. And then on Thursday, December 16th at 7:30, Thursdays with NoMAA resumes with Jessica Mafia, sponsored by Lino Press. That will be again online, as was tonight's program. We also invite everyone to please visit our website, nomanyc.org, for information on all of these workshops and events, to see an events calendar and exhibitions and events that are coming up by artists and other arts organizations uptown in December and beyond. You may also sign up to receive NoMAA's weekly newsletter, And don't forget to calendar your own exhibitions and events, all on our website, nomanyc.org. We thank everyone for watching and wish you all a great weekend.
Thank you, Martin, and thanks to all of you tonight, and especially thank you to Takashi and to Kae.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Night.